Here we are doing this interview a year later. We tried to film this almost a year ago exactly, and we happened to just be shooting right into the sun, and the footage was completely unusable. And then the rest of 2020 happened, and we just never got around to it. And so here we are now, filming this interview finally.
Of me.
Yes.
Yeah, so there is a pre-existing interview where I interviewed Owen while driving. We have since realized that driving interviews kind of suck. Too much is going on. So anyways, we're going to sit down, we're going to focus on each other. And we're gonna
Right. The idea was there. It's just we did not have the technology or the technical prowess to make the audio
sound good.
Yeah. All right. So the first question is, you grew up as an Army brat. I think not everyone knows that about you. And I just want you to talk about how that shaped your views on life and in travel.
Yeah. So I think that by the time I went to college, or including my move to college, I had moved roughly 20 some odd times. I think that growing up and moving that much has really instilled a feeling of not having much time in any given place. So my parents always really impressed upon me the importance of seeing and experiencing as much as you can. I mean, I hate to say as quickly as you can, but that has always been a priority in my family's life every time we move, is just to try to soak up as much as we can. And I feel like in that, it's really taught me that every place has something amazing to offer. Even if you don't love everything about a place, there's going to be stuff that you can find that's amazing. But I will say the one downside of that is that I've realized I have this internal timer that goes off at about a year when I get bored at any one given location.
Mm-hmm. Did you have a favorite place that you lived?
It was probably a tie between Hawaii and Germany, and I liked them both a lot, but for very different reasons. I think that I really love history, and I think that, our country has a lot of history too, but it just doesn't, I don't know, the architecture and stuff, it just doesn't go back that far. I mean, it does, but I don't know, it's all these weird preconceived notions that I had about it, because since being on the road, I've totally learned that that's not the case. We've just really fallen in love with Native American art and art history and their architecture. So I just think that it's just a different type that I really enjoy. And then Hawaii, just for all the outdoor as a surfer, I really enjoy. Mm-hmm. Hawaii lives very deep in my soul.
When we hit the road 4 years ago, were you in search of something, or did you have something you were hoping to get out of the whole experience? And do you think you've achieved that, if there is anything?
I don't know that I was in search of anything in particular. I think I was just coming off of my first desk job experience, and there was aspects of it that I enjoyed, my coworkers and my department that I was in, but the rest of it, I just didn't thrive in that environment, and I felt like I was just trying to run as far away from that experience as possible. And it's funny because I still think about that to this day. I'll catch myself in slow moments thinking what if I was still there? And I think that I was running, honestly, from a desk. Mm-hmm. And I would say mission accomplished to a certain extent. But I think that in running away from that, I've also realized that I really enjoy working for myself, or us working together. And I think that maybe that was never going to be an opportunity that we would have or give for ourselves if we stayed in that environment. Yeah.
Can see my microphone in their shop, but it's out of focus, so I'm not going to worry about it. First time. So okay. We're learning as we go
together.
We're going to have a morning talk show. Mac and Owen in the morning. We've recently been watching Community, and that is from that show. We're many years behind, obviously, but we're working on it.
Better late than ever.
It's a good segue. We have been watching more TV recently because we recently purchased a house, and we got it up and running as an Airbnb. But, it took about a month for us to get it back in, or not back in, but to get it into renting shape. And so during that time, we happened to Netflix and chill quite a bit. And so After having this recent experience of a more traditional home lifestyle, what do you miss most about that?
I don't know why I feel like we have a hard time getting in as much exercise on the road as maybe it's not that we get less exercise in on the road, it's just less consistent. And I really enjoy consistent exercise because you kind of have to like conserve your cleanliness to some extent out on the road. And if you're like going out for a run every day, we can't shower every day. And I think that I felt a lot more inclined to exercise a lot more on a regular basis when I had access to a shower. I would say by and large that's probably the biggest one for me. And I think that there was little aspects of, even in that short amount of time that we were in the Joshua Tree area, the community seemed really, really strong of the people who live there full time, because there's a lot of people that come in and out of that area. But every person that we met that's a local to that area was just super kind, and there's a strong art community, and that's something that I've always enjoyed being a part of, and I do miss.
Well, it's interesting you bring up the idea of community, because I do think that out here on the road there is its own community too. So while it might be different, I still think that there is a good sense of community with a lot of people, at least that we run into, that live on the road.
Well, I mean, we've turned community into family this last year, for sure, with Peter and Shruthi and Chase and Amy and Carissa and Limburg, and I don't know.
I'm going to stop you because we're going to talk about that a little bit later, and I don't want to get too far into
Okay.
it, but I did just want to touch on the fact that there is a community out here,
Totally.
which is great, and we love it.
Yeah, we do love it.
So now we're going to get into some rig talk. I'm just going to name all 5 rigs that we've had.
Okay.
For those that aren't familiar, we've traveled in a Honda Element, just tent camping, for about 6 or 7 months. Then we had a Volkswagen Vanagon for a few years. We had a Sunraider that didn't quite work out. We had a Tacoma, and now we're in our Tundra with the 4-wheel camper.
Yes.
So I'm just going to name these rigs off for you, and want you to tell me what the best and worst things about them were.
Gotcha.
So Honda Element.
Honda Element, best part of it was the organization system, because when we first started traveling in it, it was an utter disaster. And there was many iterations and weekend trips and stuff like that kind of helped us figure out what that final iteration was. And it was super nice. So nice to the point where we were able to carry a third large human being with us for a month, which I thought was a pretty great accomplishment.
Yeah. We did have one of our very good friends, Thomas, stay with us in the Honda Element for about a month.
It was super fun. It was so fun. And then my least favorite thing was probably how low the clearance was, because I feel like that was the first time that we really started to dabble in doing things off-road. We would just be like, there's a dirt road, we should go check that out. And we like high-centered all the time. It was bad. I mean, we were high-centered side to side, so I don't even know if that's technically high-centered, but it was weird.
Anyways, moving on to the Vanagon.
Oh, to the van. I would say that my favorite part was the living space. It was just, man, the Germans just got it right with that one. It just like the layout was so perfect. It was so comfortable. It was small, but had everything that we needed. That will always be the gold standard for living spaces, in my personal opinion. And then I would say that the negative to that is a tie between having to cook bent over at the waist, because we had a crappy canvas, and so if the weather was bad, I would have to like cook hunched over, or the innumerable breakdowns, which
I was waiting for this.
Was the demise of the van for us. We were just wasting so much money keeping that thing moving. We had worked too hard to get on the road for.
Absolutely. And the great thing is now we're still friends with Vanagon people, so we can go enjoy that interior space without having to worry about the negatives. On to the Sunraider.
The Sunraider, my favorite would probably have to be the light and the standing desk. I feel like when we were designing the interior of that was like one of our biggest priorities, was like really nice light for working. That is always like a huge effect on my personal productivity. And then I would say that my least favorite thing was probably the fact that it didn't work out, which is extended to the suspension just was never quite right on it. And we tried so hard.
Toyota Tacoma.
Oh, our dear Lando. My favorite part about, or my favorite aspect of Lando was what he made possible. I think coming off of the Sun Raider and just being really sad and gutted over what we felt at the time was a waste of 9 months. And clearly I know that that's not the case anymore. Never wasting your time when you're learning. It made us fall back in love with being on the road because of how simple it was. It was just, sometimes you just have to go back to the basics to like figure out what it is that you're doing or what it is that you need to do going forward. My least favorite thing about it was probably in bad weather situations, we would live like this, because this is about as much as we could sit up. We were in Newfoundland and Labrador when winter started to set in and weather gets crazy in a hurry up there. And gosh, well, we spent like 18 hours one time unable to get out of the truck because it was so violently windy and rainy, and we didn't put the camper top on it. It leaked so bad. Anytime it rained, it would. So I think that there was one time we were in Maine, right? Trying to do the Acadia area, and we got a really bad rain in the middle of the night. And we were in a Walmart parking lot, and rain just started like gushing in all these places at the seam. And Owen was just like sticking his fingers. It was like, oh my gosh, it was so terrifying, and everything was getting wet. And I ran inside soaking wet to Walmart and bought a caulking gun and the only wet application sealant I could find, which was super fumey, and we just did the entire seam. And then we had to sleep with the window cracked like that, and we slept with our faces pressed up against the back tailgate just to like hopefully not die of asphyxiation overnight.
Mm-hmm. This rig, the Tundra, the four-wheel camper.
Yes. My favorite part about this setup is how comfortable it is. I think that it doesn't matter what time of year it is or the weather conditions, we are, theoretically very comfortable in here. I feel like it allows for long-term life on the road to just be very comfortable. Yeah. And I would say my least favorite thing about it is it's still bigger than we want to be.
Very true. It is a large vehicle.
Yeah.
It still fits in parking spots and things like that, but we can't go in parking garages. I mean, I don't think any of our rigs really could go in a parking garage, but no. Even in the Element, we tried to go into an REI in Seattle and hit the bumper.
It was embarrassing.
Yeah.
I think that even in certain scenarios, like when we're out off-road, sometimes tree coverage just gets too tight for us. And there's a lot of other rigs that are a lot bigger than us. And to know what our limitations are due to size, like I couldn't imagine going any bigger.
Yep. Out of all of those, do you have a favorite?
Don't ask me that. It's like picking one of my favorite children. I can't do it. Every single one of them has a special place in my heart. Okay. And I feel like served a very distinct and important purpose in our lives at a specific time. So I really don't think that I have the ability to pick a favorite.
Okay.
Do you have a favorite?
Of the rigs?
Yeah.
This would be my favorite, strictly from the fact that we could bring Luna.
Yeah, you're right.
There's aspects of all, just like you say, like this interior of the Sun Raider was my favorite to live in. I think that it was a nice blend of functionality and style.
Aesthetic,
because the Vanagon was very functional. We made it nice in the inside, but I liked the Sun Raider's interior more. It worked very well for us, and I liked that we didn't have to pop a top. So I thought that was super nice. The Tacoma was sort of like our comeback vehicle, and that it's always special for that. Same with the Element, just being the starter. The simplified lifestyle of those was very nice. I love the Tacoma. This past year would have been unusable for us because with the Tacoma, we required use of libraries and coffee shops so much for work. I didn't think about that. And we would have been shut out of luck, which,
that would have been a problem.
Obviously with this, we were not. So it's all give and take, What is the most memorable moment for you since we've been on the road?
This one is probably just because it was a bit triumphant for us, and it was after we've been on the road for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and we had a bad breakdown in like the dead of summer. It was so hot. Yeah, our fuel pump went out and our filters were clogged. Like it was just like a mess. But anyways, it was after that, and we had to get a hotel, and seriously, we were so fresh into being on the road and already having issues. But after we got it fixed, we were getting back on the road. We decided to wait until night to drive through Death Valley because Death Valley was already so hot. And we were like, the best we can get it temperature wise is like at night. It was still 110 degrees. It was so hot. I think it was like 109 when we went by Zabriskie Point. We kind of came through and then we started to climb up and over, and all of a sudden there was this bright light on the horizon, and we're like, whoa, that's going to be a big 18-wheeler coming up and over that hill. It wasn't. It was the moon rising. It was so big and so full, and the stars were so bright. It just kind of felt like this. And we pulled over on the side of the road and we spent like an hour taking pictures. It was just so cool.
Yeah.
It's just like our first like major overcoming of an obstacle on the road.
Yeah, we had, I think we entered the park around 10 p.m. I don't know what time we exited because we just kind of drove through.
Idea.
We were just racing and trying not to overheat again.
Yeah,
luckily,
we saw nothing in Death Valley because it was so dark.
And luckily, from there we pretty much, I think that problem was solved after that.
Yeah.
What's been your favorite hike other than the JMT? JMT being the John Muir Trail.
I think, oh gosh, there's so many good ones. But I think that it was probably when we went into the winds for the first time this summer. And so that's actually in episode 14 of A Summer Adrift. I only know because it just came out accidentally.
Yeah, this morning.
That was a hike that we had tried to do 2 or 3 times before. We had been shut down due to like heavy snowfall. And so it just felt very triumphant to get out there finally. And that is just a breathtaking mountain range. And it was just so nice to do 4 days. Because I never feel like we do long enough backpacking trips. So I would say heading into the backcountry of the Wind River Range for 4 days.
Yeah, that was a very special hike.
Yeah. It was fun to do it with Peter and Truthy too.
So moving on from favorite hikes to your favorite food experience.
Favorite food experience. The one that comes to mind for me is we were out in the Lake Powell area, and I think it was our first or second meal maybe with them after meeting up. I'm going to say for the first time, because like we met at SEMA and it was a super brief interaction. Like we went out to dinner, but it was one of the first times that Lindbergh was ever cooking for us. And we just had this breathtaking view of Lake Powell, and we waited for it to get to be like a little past golden hour. It was like the blue hour. And I don't remember if it was a Vietnamese dish or if it was a Korean dish, but it was noodles, pork belly, peanuts, panchan, and then you just and a bunch of greens, and you just douse it in fish sauce. And Lindbergh's fish sauce is just something to write home about. He wanted to take pictures of Carissa and I eating, and I feel like at this rate we've done that lots of times together, but that one was so special, and that meal is so good. And whenever we're with them, I always request that meal. It's so good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a good one, and with a great view as well. Of the places we've been so far, what would you say has been the most underrated place?
I would have to say Northeast Canada as a whole. And I'm gonna say no one's up there. When I say no one's up there, I mean nobody who's traveling the way that we do seems to go up there, and I don't understand. It's insanely beautiful. The people are super kind. Camping is the easiest it's ever been anywhere. And it's just so different because, my familiarity with the Atlantic coast is in the South. So it's like Georgia down into Florida. That's like my familiarity with that ocean. And so I think to see it up in that area of the world is just so beautiful. That whole area is it's so wonderful. Highly underrated, and I think it's a place that you and I have talked many, many times about spending a lot more time in. There's so many islands and so many like little ferries to different areas. And just to clarify on the area that we're talking about, it's going to be like New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, and Labrador. But I think our favorite was Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, and Labrador.
Mac's parents, after her parents graduated from college, they went on a road trip for a few months before her dad's first assignment in the Army. That road trip is what inspired us to go on our road trip after Mac graduated from college in our element. And that sort of planted the seed for where we are now. We certainly wouldn't be here where we are now if not for that. During their trip, they took a photo at Olympic National Park at one of the beaches out there. It was a picture of both of them just looking out towards the sea, I believe. It's sort of become like this iconic photo that sort of symbolizes that trip. And so my question for Mac is, do you have a photo, or are there a few photos that come to mind when you think of our travels?
I feel like, again, one of the biggest ones that comes to mind for me is one of the photos that we took on the side of the road in the middle of the night in Death Valley, because the stars are just, you can see the Milky Way, and then there's a car that's going by, so it's got this cool light streak, and you're sitting on the roof of the van. I think that the reason why that photo is so iconic to us of my parents is they're both looking out to the sea, and they're not together. My mom's on top of the rock and my dad's like leaning up against it, and it just feels like potential. That photo for me of you on the roof, it feels like potential, or like we've finally like gotten to this point of potential after sitting behind a desk for so long and being miserable. It just felt like the epitome of freedom. But as far as like one of the both of us, I just don't know that we have that. But I will say there's one of you, me, Peter, and Truthy that comes pretty damn close for me.
Which one is that?
Yes. Okay, so we are in Utah and we're at a cliff. It's sunset. It's a film photo. I like sat the camera up on a rock, and we were all just like sitting there enjoying a beer as the sun was going down, and you guys are looking off into the distance. I'm looking like directly into the camera, which is kind of, it's kind
I think I know this one.
But I love that photo so much because it just feels like it captures a very similar feeling for me. Mm-hmm. But also I kind of love that, our community that we've built on the road is also a part of that. So I would say if I had to pick one where you and I are both in it, that's actually one of my favorite pictures I've taken since being on the road. I love that photo so much. Mm-hmm. And it's in film, so it kind of goes hand in hand with my parents' photo as well.
That's true. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. We're back. There's a 30-minute record time on our cameras, so we cut out there for a second. Before we cut out, I started talking about my own unsolicited answer, and I was just telling Mac that mine is actually of a landscape, not necessarily a photo of the both of us. It's just a photo of the Oregon coast. Yeah, it's really beautiful. It was almost a little bit surreal. It brings back more memories. I was saying that photos that we take recently tend to not have that. I think that once the photos age a little bit, they have more memories attached to them, which I think helps create some of that symbolism. There's a photo of Mac that I also took on that walk out there that I think is really dreamy.
Well, I think that, again, I want to point out I'm not looking at the camera in that picture. So I think that there's something to looking, and I personally like taking pictures of people looking over landscapes, not looking at the camera. Maybe it stems back to that image, but for some reason, it's just a sense of adventure. It's a sense of purpose and just potential. Yeah. And I love capturing that.
Yeah. The photo I'm thinking of, you are looking at the camera, but there is one where you're not looking at the camera as well.
The one that I'm not looking at the camera stands out to me.
Yeah. Okay. To each their own.
Yes, of course.
I like them both.
Okay, cool.
So I'm going to preface this next question by mentioning the fact that I initially wrote these questions a year ago. And so some of them I've rewritten and totally changed, but some of them I haven't. So this one might sting a little bit because it's about Luna.
Okay.
She's obviously no longer with us, but I still think it's important to ask for people curious about cats.
Yeah.
Just wanted to go ahead and apologize beforehand. So we traveled with Luna for almost 2 years in the truck, and I just wanted to ask, how was having her along, and how did it affect the way we traveled?
I'll start with the way it affected our travels, and I would say that there was a reframing of priorities, because obviously her welfare was our number one priority, and I think that we are able to know what our threshold for comfort level is as far as like heat or cold is concerned, and we can't just ask her. We just have to play it safe. And, there was a couple of times where we realized we're like, okay, like 82 is the threshold for Luna. And I think that a lot of times that just comes with knowing your pet, because I do think it took us time to figure that out. But, we couldn't leave the camper and go on a 4-day backpacking trip. We would have to sort out some accommodations for her. We were only ever comfortable with her staying in here for a single night without us. And that was only if we were comfortable with the range that the weather conditions were going to fall in. So I was very much just like making sure that she was good. I would say is the major change. And then maybe the fact that like one of us a lot of times would stay out in the truck with her, like on a grocery run or just to run into the store real fast, which that's like such a small inconvenience. How it was amazing and kind of profound. She brought a lot of extra meaning to our travels. And I think that we're getting to the point where we've seen a lot of this stuff before. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to like toss out the bored word, but I think that seeing the world through her eyes was pretty special. I didn't wear waterproof mascara.
I should have saved this question for last.
And I also think that it's a pretty amazing realization to find out that this creature that we know and we love but we can't talk to is so much more adaptable than we ever gave her credit for. There's a little bit of guilt now that goes along with like not bringing her sooner.
Yeah.
That I'm trying to sort through still. Because, we did try her in the van and she really didn't like it. Right. It was super loud. Yeah. And the thing is, like, we didn't have as much ability to control temperature for her. And so, I mean, there are, like, I understand the decision that we made. And I do think that we, like, made it the best decision that we could have with what we had at the time. But it meant that we could have had 2 more.
Yeah, 2 more years with her.
2 more years with her. I mean, in a living situation that turns out she really thrived in.
Yeah. She adapted quite well. She seemingly, I mean, I would say that she loved the truck.
She did. She knew that this was her home.
Yeah. She blew us away with how well she did in the truck. And for any future or prospective cat travelers out there, they are great travel companions. I do think that, one day down the line, there will be another travel kitty.
Of course. We just have too much love to give. And it feels like a waste not to, like, smother something with it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, all right. I miss that girl. Is my mascara all over the place?
No, it looks good.
Okay. Thank you.
Over the past 5 years, we've been on the road for 5 years. Our work has evolved quite a bit. When we started, we were only doing freelance design and animation, our careers that we had started out in before the road. And now we're doing a lot more social media stuff than design, honestly. Yeah, I just wanted to know what you want our work to look like in the next few years. And do you want it to kind of continue on this trajectory? Like, how do you see it happening? Like, what do you want?
Yeah, it has changed quite a bit. I think that for me personally, I know that my future is not in design. Specifically graphic design. I still love being a creative person. I love painting. I love drawing. I love illustration. Those are some things that I will never, ever stop doing. But I think that I've come to realize that as far as graphic design is concerned, I don't like doing those things for other people. I feel like I ended up as a graphic designer out of necessity, not out of a desire to actually want to do that. I was working retail post-college, and it was the most accessible thing for me to fake it until I make it in. And that's how I've gotten to this point. So I was never a draw to me of passion of any kind. So I definitely don't want to be doing that type of work in the future. As far as myself is concerned, I think that I have found that I really love storytelling. And I do think that social media is a really amazing outlet for that. I think that, there's a lot of negative things to say about social media, but I think that by and large, I have only positive things to say about it, because I think it's helped me realize that I have a voice. I have something to say that's like maybe worth saying. I don't know. That's a terrible way to say that. For as long as I can remember, I've wanted to be a travel show host, and this feels like my weird outlet for that, because I don't know how to work towards that goal. So yeah, I don't know that I can tell you exactly what I want work to look like in the next 5 years. I might be hitting all over the map like in Battleship, trying to figure out what the right thing is at the moment, but I do feel very proud of the fact that I've gotten to the point this year for the first time that I feel like I can comfortably turn design work down to give myself the space to figure out what is next. But I would say it's somewhere in the realm of storytelling.
This past summer, it's well documented, in a summer adrift, we traveled with a large group of people for a long amount of time, which is out of the ordinary for us. We maybe spend, other than this past summer, about 10% of our time with other people and 90% by ourselves. And totally went the opposite direction this past summer. And so how was that experience traveling with a group for a long period of time?
I personally really loved it. I am a people person. I really enjoy being around other people as a social being. This year was clearly weird and hard and challenging in every way imaginable. By going through that experience with a group of close-knit friends, helped process it as it was happening and to get outside perspective. And when you're with a group of people, it feels like nobody's having a low moment at the same time. So people can pick each other up as it goes. And then it just like turned these little weird daily activities, like going to the grocery store, going to the post office, or getting your car washed. Those things just had they just felt a little extra special. It's like having a slumber party with your friends. Like you do the same things that you'd be doing anyways, but it's just so much more fun. And as adults, like we don't get the chance to do that. And in fact, we don't even get the chance to spend that much time around other people other than, the significant others that you have in your life. And it was like we were friends and then we were family, but we're also this like team that has just been solidified. I mean, it was just a bonding experience that for the history books, essentially, because everything that's happened this past year has been like relatively unprecedented, once in a lifetime kind of stuff. So I think that it was very nice to have other people to experience that with. And I think in a normal environment, I don't think that I know for a fact in a normal environment, we would have not stayed together for that long. But it just felt like we needed each other in those months.
Yeah, I think that adversity breeds for closer bonding, and that's certainly what happened. It's tradition at MAK's family's dinners to talk about your high, low, and nugget for the day. The high being your high of the day, the low being the low, and the nugget being one thing you learned during the day. And so I'm going to extrapolate that over the past 5 years for our travels and say, what is your high, low, and nugget from the past 5 years of traveling?
Whoa. Oh God. Okay, I think that I'm gonna start with my low. I think it's pretty cut and dry. After we had the final straw breakdown in the van, Stanley, I don't know that we've ever been that close to being completely broke. We had done such a good job saving money to go on the road for a rainy day, and that rainy day came so much faster. And I also don't think that that's what we thought our rainy day was going to look like. That's never what we, I think, planned for that money to be spent on. It was more of like a dry spell in work.
Yeah. It ended up being almost more of a rainy month than a rainy day.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, so it felt like over the course of a month and 2 engines and a radiator. Was there a transmission in there too?
Yeah, we did get
Yeah, and then a transmission. So it was just like this whole domino effect of really, really expensive bills. And we went from being comfortable to broke in a month. And I think that it was extremely vulnerable because when we went on the road in the element, we were just going on our savings. And then the day that money ran out, we were coming off the road against our will. And we had worked so hard for 2.5 years, ensuring that that didn't happen again when we hit the road full time. So in this 2.0 version. And then it happened. We had done everything that we could to prepare for it, and it still happened. I never want to feel that way again. I said it the first time, but now I really don't want to feel it again. So that's my low. My nugget is I have learned that I have a very, very deep love and affinity for Native American art and art history. It's something that I would say has maybe come on even more so in the last 2 years, where you and I have really sought out petroglyphs and dwellings and stuff like that. It's just such a rich and really cool history that's so different. What a bummer to have not learned about that stuff sooner and more in depth in school. But I'm thankful that we're making up for lost time now. And then I would say my high, God, there's been so many. But I think that my high was probably after the Sunraider, when we got the Tacoma and started moving again, because I felt like over the course of that 9 months, we were so singularly focused on that build. We had completely lost touch with why we were on the road, because we hadn't even been on the road 9 months. And I think that when we actually crossed into the border in Canada, it just felt like such a triumphant moment. It was a little bit of an aha moment. It was like, oh yeah, this is why we work so hard to continue to choose this every single day and to ensure that it continues to happen. So I would say that my high was finally making it to Canada after the Sunraider.
All right. And the very last question, this is a question you asked me, so I just thought it would be fitting to ask you as well, was one piece of travel advice.
I'm going to be honest, I don't remember what yours is.
I don't either.
But I think that my piece of travel advice would probably be that it doesn't have to look any particular way. You don't have to have any particular vehicle. You don't have to have any particular destination or any particular gear. You just need to go. You just need to get started. Because the thing is, you can change vehicles once you get out there. You can change your route. You just need to get started, because the thing is, time is so precious and short. So you just don't want to waste a single moment. So just if you can make it happen, don't wait for the stars to align. I think that there's really something to putting a date on the calendar, because that has really worked well for us, is just putting an end-all be-all date on the calendar and doing everything in your power to make sure that you hit as closely to that date as possible.
Well, thanks everyone for listening. I know this one's going to be pretty long.
Sorry.
But I had a lot of questions. So
yeah, I'm also chatty.
So yeah, thanks for watching, everyone, and we'll see you down the road.
Oh my God, look at you. Nice.